All right, we have one public hearing here right before the regular plan commission meeting, so we'll open that up. With the time for public comment, step up to the mic, state your name and address, and then comment will be given at that time. The applicant will be given the time to respond. We can go back and forth as much as needed, and then once that closes out, we'll start our plan commission meeting. John. Call order the public hearings of the Richard Young Fire Station at North 54 West 26455 Lisbon Road. Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024 at 6:32 PM. Roll call, please.
President Osterman,
Here.
trustee Plotecker,
Here.
Commissioner Ilhoffen,
Here.
Commissioner Eberly,
Here.
Commissioner Howard,
Here.
Commissioner McCormick,
Here.
Commissioner McDonald,
Here.
Planner Sumwalt,
Here.
Attorney Macy,
Here.
Engineer Lysis,
Here.
Administrator Nicholas,
Here.
and Clerk Capazzo Ketch to record the minutes.
Given that a public hearing will be held by the Lisbon Plan Commission on Wednesday, October 3rd, 2024, during the regular Plan Commission meeting, which starts at 6:30 PM at the Richard Young Memorial Fire Station, North 54 West 26455 Lisbon Road, to solicit public comments on a request by John Pina for a major grading conditional use permit in the R1 Suburban Single Family Residential District for the purpose of regrading the property located at West 226 North 8362 Freeze Place, LSBT 0191.997.004. This was adjourned from August 28th and September 5th. Who's starting off?
I can start. So since we met last, I've gotten some information from Mr. Pina's consultant, Wetland Waterway Consulting, Dave Meyer, has provided a mitigation plan for the wetland, which satisfies one of the conditions I was initially recommending. The other bit of information that we have is that the Army Corps of Engineers will not provide the letter that we were hoping for. As far as a jurisdictional determination, they don't do that unless there's going to be some type of fill proposed. And in this case, we're talking about mitigating and taking the fill out of this wetland and letting it go back to be natural. They did provide as much in an email in writing. And so they basically in an email stated they are claiming jurisdiction over the wetland and that they won't provide that letter. So that's another one of my previously recommended conditions that's essentially been satisfied. As far as the follow-up information from the petitioner, we have a picture that was provided of the area behind the home, specifically behind the garage. There's a man door, and there was some discussion during the public hearing last time regarding the grade in that area. There is somewhat of a grade change between the door and the ground in that area, but it's not as much as what we had thought, I think, during our discussion last time, as the picture in your packet would show. The door is boarded off. It's not being used by the residents currently. So there is not a amended grading plan from the petitioner at this time. Another thing that was done, I believe the village did have staff go out and look at the ditch on Freeze Place, which was something that we had discussed and something that was brought up at the last go around of this public hearing. Those are the bits of new information that I have to share with the Plan Commission. The petitioner is present in the audience. If the Plan Commission has any specific questions for them.
Questions from the commission?
No, good.
Barry?
No.
Joel?
Yes, I do have a question. Do we get anything from Sewer Pack regarding the natural resource area in the area?
I have not heard anything back from Sewer Pack yet. When I
So we
did,
don't know if there is one or not.
when I did originally reach out, I reached out to Chris Jors, who basically said he was going to bump it to Joel Deedle, but they were busy and didn't know when they would be able to get back to me, and I haven't heard back. I think they'll have lots of time when the snow flies and they're not doing wetland delineations anymore.
I have nothing else.
Brian? No, nothing from Becky.
Nothing from me.
Something else from the applicant? All right, so then we'll open up the public comment. Please step forward, state your name and address.
You'll need to turn the microphone on. Just flip the round button over to the side. Yep.
Thomas Nemacher. I live at W 225 and 8381 Longview Drive. I looked at the property too the other day. And the village needs to do that ditching because all the water from the road, the hill, goes in their front yard. And if you, what it looks like from his backyard corner by the woodshed to the front of the house, it looks like it's pitching towards the road. So I think he does need some fill there to try to get the water off his house. That's probably why he has so much water problems. But I do not want it all in my backyard. Because it looks like, I didn't do no heights or nothing, but it looks like the last culvert was not installed by you guys. It just looks like a culvert with dirt on top of it, and that was it. It doesn't even look like the right height. So I think that's why the water is not flowing down there to where it's supposed to go. Because it was mentioned last time that they tried to put it in the front yard, down the ditch, and it did not flow down there. It would not go out there. So I think the last culvert is not put in right.
Tom Burnclaw, N60 W 25864 Walnut Road, Village of Lisbon. I have a comment regarding the October Fields final plat and the waiver request.
This is for the public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. You'll have a chance to speak though.
Perfect.
So when we're.
I'll
done-
be back.
When we're done with this, we'll do citizens' comments and you'll come up.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You.
Anyone else speak in the public hearing? Question at this time. Sure.
So DPW staff had gone out to the subject property, shot grades throughout the ditch line. The ends of all the culverts that go towards, I believe it'd be towards the north, correct? Where everything is flowing towards. And the individual that just spoke, he's correct, that last culvert that does that was installed it's back pitch, but it's very insignificant. It's basically about 1.5 inches back pitched. But the ditch lines themselves are all draining properly. In calculating out the slope through those ditch lines, it's over % slope throughout all, in some areas even more so. So I wouldn't recommend any additional work to be done out there from what I see with regards to the ditch line. So the culverts themselves though are all pitched properly going towards the waterway that is towards the north, if I've got my directions right now. So towards the wetlands, that would be, yep, that's correct. Towards the end of the roadway.
Except that last culvert, right? That last
Except for
culvert
that
is
last culvert,
pitched the wrong way.
it's pitched the wrong way. It's about 1.5 inches back pitch, but that's, to be honest, and maybe Joe could probably speak of this too. The water is going to find its way out. Otherwise, there might be a little bit of pooling that's right before that culvert. But it wouldn't back up that much further than maybe 10, 15 feet.
So the ditch could be used for drainage.
It could be used, yeah. Yep.
Questions from? We open for comment again?
out there. And half the culverts are already plugged from inside on both ends of each driveway. They're not cleaned out completely. They are plugged half the way, so water is not flowing through them. They need to be cleaned out and repitched.
John Penna. The issue that we had running the sump pumps or a few years ago when we ran it in the ditch was it didn't go, once it got past that last culvert that they're in question of pitched the wrong way, it didn't escape after that point. Because there's so much water between our sump pumps and the neighbor across the street, kitty corner, all that water just wasn't flowing anywhere. So it would go past that last culvert and it would just stop there. It wouldn't escape into the wetland natural water flow that is supposed to be there because it's all overgrown there.
Commission level. I don't have any other additional questions, just my commission that once public hearing is closed, it can be absolutely no new information questions. If anything that's going to be discussed, it can have to be much discussed here.
Joe, is your mic muted? Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Thank you.
If you have any questions, now would be the appropriate time to be asking. Joe?
I'm looking at the grading plan that was provided. I mean, this grading plan isn't designed to grade, to drain the lot towards the front to the west, correct? Am I reading something wrong? What am I seeing, Mitch, that's wrong? It looks like it's draining towards the back corner.
It is, and that's where it was naturally going beforehand. So
Okay. Then what difference does it make what the ditch is and out in front? This is all going to the northeast. What am I missing here?
you're really not missing anything. So because it was brought up last time about his sump pump and that where it was
Right.
discharging and the site grading itself really is not changing the direction of the flow of the water or anything like that, what he's proposing to do. So I don't see any additional ill effect that would happen to any of the neighbors. But what was brought up was that his sump pump drains all the time and that it would be nice to see the sump go to the front ditch line. And so
Okay.
that was why it was investigated and that's why it was
Okay.
discussed. It's
I'm
kind of
sorry, I
to
forgot.
be honest,
You're-
it's
you're
kind of a
right.
separate issue.
I recall that's what it was. I thought I was missing something here because you're right, we did talk about that. Okay, thank you, Mitch. That's all I had, sir.
Rob, any? John? Terry? Brian? Becky?
Nope.
Not you, Siri. Okay, anything else from staff?
I would just add that if the plan commission wants to approve this, it would be subject to striking conditions 3 and 4 as those have been satisfied. Conditions 3 and 4 in full staff review.
Those go over those.
3 was the petitioner shall submit a wetland mitigation plan for review and approval by village staff prior to the issuance of a conditional use permit. Condition 4 was the petitioner shall obtain a written jurisdictional determination from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers prior to the issuance of a conditional use permit. And again, we did receive mitigation plan, and the Corps will not be providing a letter, but they did in email, written email, state that they are claiming jurisdiction over the well.
So these were your,
These were my recommended conditions that essentially have been satisfied.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question then. How, if, I'm looking at condition number 6, which deals with this natural resource area, which is actually 5 and 6. If we're not going to be able to get a determination from Sewer Pack, if we were to approve this tonight with these conditions and Sewer Pack comes back and says, as an example, that the back end of the lot is a natural resource area, we've just approved something which may not be able to be approved. I don't know how we deal with that. We're not gonna know tonight. I mean, I don't think we'll probably know till the end of the year at the earliest. But now we've got a whole new set of circumstances, and how do we deal with that after the fact? I don't have an answer. I don't know.
We don't need sewer pack, do we? Do we need sewer pack to approve that?
They're the only ones that are going to determine it.
essentially, we're in a
So-
position where we just didn't get the information.
Right.
And that's not because of the applicant, that's because of the agencies that have been contacted to get this are basically not doing anything.
Right, and again, the question is whether a isolated natural resource area is still present. The previous wetland data that was available came from the Wisconsin Wetland Inventory. And that data showed a wetland in the same area following the same boundary as the isolated natural resource area. That area was also wooded. In their determination of corridors and isolated natural resource areas, they do sometimes take into consideration multiple factors. So the question I posed directly was, is there still an isolated natural resource area present now that you have the updated wetland delineation that shows that there isn't a wetland in the exact area that that boundary showed previously? Still a wetland on the north end of the lot, the northeast corner, but not the whole eastern lot line as was previously thought. Is that the deciding factor, or did the trees warrant that there was also something there? And
How do, that not getting, you gave us a recommendation for the, determination from the Corps of Engineers and this, how do we make a decision? We don't know.
well, again, with the Corps, we know they are claiming jurisdiction over the wetland. And there's no proposal to remove the wetland that's there. The wetland that's present is just different than what the previous data showed. But again, the delineation was done by a certified professional who's certified by the state. And so I trust that it was done correctly. My concern over the isolated natural resource area has less to do with the grading. The trees have already been removed. It has more to do with how that area can be used in the future. And again, that's why I have a recommendation of, if there is still an isolated natural resource area present, there should be a deed restriction or a protective covenant that states that that area is protected in perpetuity, which would preclude the construction of a structure in that portion of the yard, essentially. If it stays in open space, whether there are trees there or not, Sewer Pack could come back with some type of prescription based on their determination, but wait and see.
Number 7 says that they have to satisfy all the comments from Sewer Pack as well, so.
Right,
The approval is conditioned on what the planner has written in the report, so if it doesn't, he still has to answer all of the questions except 3 and 4.
So obviously we have some neighbors that are concerned and we have an applicant that's concerned for his property and we have to balance the both. So are we, if this conditional use permit was approved, is everything within the law properly, as long as all this information is brought in to protect both entities?
I believe so.
Well, I don't know about protecting both entities. I mean, we have conflicting information as to what needs to be done, so I don't know that I could, I mean, I think from the way you interpreted the question, but I can't say that the neighbors, these conditions protect the neighbors. And their
But I mean, we
concerns
have to,
being
like,
addressed, I mean.
Per the code is what it is,
Oh.
I mean, we have a code, we have the law, we're supposed to rule on the law.
Mhm.
So we have to look at this, are we following all the proper procedures? That per our code, as it's set up, we are doing what's right here.
Yeah, to the best, we don't go out and research the work that the planner does, but based on what the planner's research shows, unless he sees ambiguities or has questions, so. I would, follow his. If the conditions are satisfied, the law is being met.
Any other questions from the
Which I
commission?
think is your point.
Right.
Okay. Anything else in the planning commission? Any other comments?
I just had a question. When they set up the conservation in perpetuity for building, is there a buffer zone or is it just basically property and then what is then designated the conservation district?
It would match the isolated natural resource area boundary, and there are not setbacks from conservation easements. In the past, I've had to work around, okay, if there's no setback, how do you do construction in that area? And we've used some guidelines to prescribe that folks try to stay 7 feet or so off of it while working on a construction project, but
There are wetland setbacks.
there are wetland setbacks, those exist. But again, the part I'm talking about is for the unknown isolated natural resource area, and that's the part that I would want to see the deed restriction pertain to.
Sherry, is your mic on?
We're all off. It's not red though. No. Three little dots. Button, little 3 little dot one.
Can you hear me now? No?
There.
How about now?
Give her yours.
Is it on now?
Oh, it'll light up red if it is.
It's okay. I'll talk really loud. The natural resource area, you said trees were already removed from that area, or what was that, trees that were removed?
We would have to ask the petitioner.
Yes, all the trees that were cut down on the property were all dead, ash trees.
Else from the commission?
I'm just trying to figure out in my head. At some future date, we're going to get a determination by sewer pack of the natural resource area. But by that time, if we approve this tonight, how is that gonna be followed up on? The village gets a letter from sewer pack saying, here's a drawing, here's a map, here's a natural resource area. They'll probably copy the property owner.
He doesn't get his
We wouldn't issue it.
permit. We don't issue the permit until it's all satisfied.
It does state that in number 7, Joe, the very
Yeah.
first part of that sentence.
Right. Okay, I
And
guess
we-
that's
we
what
step
we
up.
have to deal with.
We step up the high pressure campaign to get an answer is what happens.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from the commission? We're open for any more comments, anyone in the?
Okay, I'm a little confused by his comment that's gonna go on our, what do you call it? Our property, notes in our books that there's wetlands on there, is that gonna affect our cost of our properties? That there's wetlands on our deeds now?
It doesn't pertain to any property other than the petitioners. So the condition that I'm recommending only pertains to Mr. Pena's property. And we only have a updated wetland delineation for Mr. Pena's property.
Okay,
So for the remainder of the properties in the area, the best available data for wetlands still comes from that Wisconsin wetland inventory. Until such point, a field determination is completed, which would require a homeowner, property owner to hire a consultant similar to what Mr. Pena did to create that data.
okay. So I want, just wasn't sure.
Thank you. Any other comments? Anyone on Zoom?
No one present on Zoom besides staff.
Okay. Anything else in the commission at this time? Anything else anything else from staff?
Nope.
And the applicant? All right, we'll close this public hearing then at 6:58. Right, we're going to the regular plan commission meeting. Item 3 is citizens' comments, sir.
Tom Bernclaw and 60W25864 Walnut Road in Lisbon. So, comment in regards to the October Fields final plat. Yesterday morning, I had sent an email to Dan Scardino and Joe Bukovic. It didn't receive a reply. I'm not upset about that. I just sent the email yesterday, so it's totally understandable, but I would just like to read the email. Dan and Joe, you might recall that I attended your open house back in May regarding the October Fields development. During the open house, I asked specifically about walking paths. I was assured by Mike Carrick that walking paths would be included in the development. I see on the village agenda for the final plat of October Fields, you are asking for a waiver to exclude walking paths from the development. I respectfully ask that you rescind this waiver request and uphold your word. A reply from you prior to the Plan Commission meeting would be much appreciated. My apologies, I don't have Mike Carrick's email address. You are welcome to forward this to him. Thanks much. And then it has my signature. So I don't know if Joe had an opportunity to take a look at this or if he has the ability to rescind the request. I guess if he does not, I know the planner has already recommended approval of the waiver. I would just ask you commissioners to just consider that, and I guess ultimately ask that you deny the waiver and put the walking paths in. And the areas that I think they're most needed are along Mary Hill Road and Walnut Road. And both of those areas have dedicated right-of-way on the subdivision plat and also 25-foot landscape easements along that road, along the roadways. So my feeling is that there's plenty of room for the walking paths to go in. I do have one other question that's not relative to the final plat approval, but it's relative to the development, and I think this would be the forum to ask the question. So at that same open house at Point back in May, those who were in attendance were told that the village of Lisbon will be reducing the speed on Mary Hill from 45 to 35. And so my question to you is, when is that scheduled to occur? And that's the last of my comments. Thank you.
So just to let you know, we can't reply to things that aren't on an agenda item.
So the last,
You wanna-
the last question I did
Right,
ask.
you
yeah,
can, if
okay.
you want to wait around till after the meeting,
Sure,
we can talk,
perfect.
but I just can't respond. It's not agendized.
Okay, yep, and I kind of prefaced that before I got into the question. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else wish to make any comments during citizens' comments tonight? Anyone else show up on Zoom?
Nope.
Item 4 is approval of the meeting minutes. We had the September 5th, 2024 public hearing and plan commission minutes, and then the September 25th, 2024 plan commission minutes. Any comments or questions, or is there a motion on the minutes?
I have a comment, Mr. President, on page 2 of 6. The public
Minutes.
on September 5th.
Okay.
I was gonna say that. I think, and it's the comments that I made toward the bottom of the page, 2 of 6, and paragraph starts Attorney Macy. If there's a word I think missing, otherwise the 2 sentences say exactly the same thing. I think in the second sentence, it would make sense, but I'll defer to the body. He explained that more water can leave your site, but it has to leave at the same location where it left before, and it can't leave at a greater rate. Otherwise, the 2 sentences say the same thing.
I think all of our packets only have the 25th minutes in them.
Well, I have the,
I have both.
I have the 5th.
You got both, I had them in the email, but I don't have them in front of me.
I've got this.
Here you go. Take mine.
I just, when I read it the first time, it just seemed like, otherwise,
Yep.
the 2 sentences sound like almost, like I said the same thing twice. And I think the latter time I said
I think I
more
just
water.
reworded it and didn't delete that second one. So thank you for catching that. I will make that change.
Planning Commission understand the request?
Yes.
All right.
All I asked.
So let's take these separate. So the September 5th minutes, would there be a motion on those? Move to approve the minutes with the changes suggested by Attorney Macy,
McDonald second. Oh,
second by Rob. Second by Rob. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Then we would have the September 25th minutes. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the minutes of September 25th as presented.
And seconded by Sherry to approve as presented. Any comments, questions, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimous. Number 5, unfinished business. Discussion and necessary action on the request by Don Pena for a major grading conditional use permit in the R1 residential district to regrade the property at West 226 North 8362 Freeze Place, LSBT 0191.997.004. Looking for some kind of motion on this item.
I will make a motion to approve the request by John Penna for a major grading use permit in the R-1 residential district to regrade the property at W 226 and 8362 Freeze Place, including the planner's comments.
I'll second.
Brian?
And that's striking conditions 3 and 4 as recommended by the planner, correct?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay with that in a second?
Yes, sir.
And the only other thing, I'd like the minutes to reflect that these are all, and Orland, correct me if I'm wrong, all conditions precedent to the issuance of the permits. And,
Correct.
start a continuation of the work. Is
Correct.
that your understanding?
Correct.
Motion okay with that?
Yes.
In a second?
I am too, yes.
Any discussion from the commission? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Number 6, new business. A, discussion necessary action on the request by Jeff Bartlett for extraterritorial approval of a single lot certified survey map for the property located at North 82 West 28441 Vista Drive and known as MRTT 0336.034.002 and recommendation to the village board of the same.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Richard.
Second.
By Joe, second by Sherry. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimous. Item B, discussion necessary action and request by applicant Joe Bukovich of MKJC LLC for the following related to the proposed October Field subdivision and the vacant parcel located at along Mary Hill and Walnut Roads and identified as LSBT 0255.998. We have waiver to the Chapter 12 Land Division Ordinance, Section 8.14 regarding trails. And we have the final plat approval for the proposed October Field subdivision. Warren?
In the overview for this item, I go through the background of various items that have already taken place for this project. So the most pertinent, I think, for tonight, the village board did approve the preliminary plat. That was on June 12th. The village board already approved the development agreement. That was on July 10th. And the reason for that happening so early was that the developer wanted to start their major grading, and we wanted to make sure that that was done before they did so. And so there has been grading going on the site. The biggest takeaway is that the final plat is consistent with the preliminary plat. The county has, just as of this week, provided their blessing for this project. So in my staff review, I had stated that we had not heard back from them yet, but again, we did hear back from them this week. The new item for this is the request for the waiver for trails. This is something that was missed the first go around on staff's part. I believe most of us were under the impression that trails were similar to sidewalks and that the Plan Commission may require them, but the language says shall be provided in the code in 8.14. I went back and looked at the history of the project and when this may or may not have come up. The plans were consistent from the conceptual review to the final plat now, in that they never showed any trails. There was a different shape for the outlot 3, which is on the east end of the development. And there was a mention of wanting to have a grass trail there at one of the public hearings for this item. One of the previous public hearings for the rezoning for this item, to be more specific. Staff was recommending at that time that the road connection in that area be made. And the petitioner went along with staff's recommendation and put in that road connection. And in that instance, that reconfigured that outlot, and there was no more trail being proposed in that area because they were making the through road connection that staff had requested to complete the road network in the area. And so there wasn't much discussion about this topic previously. I wasn't at the open house that was referenced by the gentleman earlier during citizen comment. But I can say that there was very minimal discussion on this topic throughout the public hearings that occurred for the rezoning. I don't know that there was much discussion on it during the preliminary plat either. We did have a discussion on this topic for a different plat during the rezoning for that, or I won't go any further into that because it's not germane to this discussion, but at this meeting for a different project, we did have a discussion on trails where I think a lot of folks thought that the code language was different than what it is. So
Can you elaborate on that?
it was during Mr. Carrick's other plat project,
The one on Plainview,
the one on Plainview.
which we also did not have.
Right. So it's not too late in this instance, and it's not too late in that instance. In both instances, the proposal is to not have them. In both instances, there aren't existing trails to connect to in the area, which is something for the Plan Commission to consider. In the case of this project, during one of the public hearings, a request, a desire for trails was brought up by one resident in the area, and it was during the conversation about traffic on Mary Hill. And so whether they were looking for the village to do something on Mary Hill, or whether they were looking for something to be done within this development specifically wasn't clear to me based on the way the comment was made. But that was the only instance where it came up from the public, to my knowledge, during our processes. So the petitioner, at the recommendation of staff, has requested this formal waiver to make sure that we're following our own rules. And that is why you're seeing it now rather than earlier. We did grant a waiver for, which is noted in the staff review, for cul-de-sac length for the cul-de-sac on the north end of the development. That was granted along with the preliminary plat. This would have been there too, had we known what we know today. So my apologies for the inconvenience.
Discussion at the commission. So, Joe?
I have a couple of comments. First of all, did we get a landscaping plan? Because we don't have one.
We did.
We did get one? Okay.
We did.
Which goes part and parcel with the walking paths. I personally believe there should be a walking path along Mary Hill. The reason being is eventually I envision a walking path all the way up to Silver Spring. We've got in Vista Run in the village of Sussex, we got walking paths that would connect to across the street by the same developer. We're gonna have walking paths. The last time we saw a concept plan for that subdivision, there were walking paths that connected up to Silver Spring and went west all the way to the edge of that property, which was eventually gonna coincide with the county's path plan for that whole area along Silver Spring. So I think it makes sense. And I'd like to see, since we have that 25-foot, I mean, we don't have the complete stuff there, but we do have a 25-foot easement along Mary Hill, and I'd like to see that being used also as a, not only landscaping, but incorporate a walking path on Mary Hill. On Walnut, I'm not so adamant about that, but I believe on Mary Hill, I can envision a walking path eventually going from Richmond all the way up to Silver Spring and going east and west from there. Excuse me.
Not working yet. I had raised the question about walking trails. I'm not sure if it was an approval plat for this or the other subdivision that you mentioned, because I thought it was a requirement.
It was the other.
I would agree, the walking trail along Mary Hill. I'm not sure. It can curve around outlet one to make it a little bit longer of a walking trail for the people in the subdivision. I'm not sure what the spacing is around that, or the drainage area would be for outlet one. But it might be a nice walking area as well. Give the people in the subdivision a little bit more trail to walk on.
Look, I'm just looking here and just, regarding, the development goes all the way up to Silver Spring, correct?
No,
No.
It goes to Walnut Drive.
it just goes to
Walnut
Walnut.
Gotcha, okay. I was just looking in connection where it would be to the bug line. No, I do, if I remember, and forgive me for the memories, I know that we were talking about traffic patterns, traffic things, walking trails, but I do also concur with Joe and Sherry that a walking, some consideration needs to be done in the area.
Rob?
Seemingly, we have the rule to put in walking paths for a reason, and to give a waiver doesn't make much sense if we're trying to get walking paths in the village.
Brian?
I'm a fan of walking paths. I think they should have one along Mary Hill.
Becky?
I agree with everybody else.
I guess my only comment, I'm not in any way against walking paths. I just want to make sure they're going somewhere. So
Couldn't agree more.
I would have a hard time asking for a walking path if it's just going to be from the 1,800 feet between this property length.
It's gotta start someplace.
Agreed, it just. it
I
doesn't need-
understand.
What I
agree
don't
with you.
want is 5 years from now, people to come in and say, why did you put a walking path for 1,800 feet and didn't continue it? So there's gotta have to be some kind of, to me, there has to be some kind of agreement or something figured in before we require them to put a walking path to nowhere, that it will go somewhere. That would be my comment.
You have a good point,
But it's-
because there's a lot of ground to cover between Walnut Road and Silver Spring.
Right, cause it's,
Private properties included,
right.
so that is a
And-
good point.
While we are sitting here going, that's a great idea, which I'm not saying a walking path isn't, trust me, this is not shooting down walking paths. Now you're gonna have to go take frontage road on Mary Hill in front of numerous people's homes if you're considering sidewalks. It's a sidewalk essentially.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have of just the frontage in Lisbon here.
It would be
another
really,
1,200 feet.
yeah, I understand.
That's
So-
why I suggested it go around Outlot 1, like we have up in Hillside Ridge. That's a self-contained walking trail, doesn't connect up with anything else, but it meanders through the subdivision and allows in the subdivision, things to walk safely or, you know,
I just like-
children to bicycle safely.
I think there's gotta be a plan if there's gonna be.
Eventually, the village of Lisbon needs a park and open space plan that incorporates walking paths. That's, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's one of the things that we're missing. But my concern is if we don't put it here, we're never gonna have anything on Mary Hill. We have 3 areas on Mary Hill that I believe we're gonna have walking paths. It's from Silver Spring down to Vista Run, across Vista Run. We've got Ski Hill on the other side, and yes, we have a gap in between that eventually that may happen, but at least we're gonna be able to get people to cover the majority of Mary Hill. We don't have the whole way, and whether or not we ever do, but when we start putting in subdivisions of this size, I think we need to have them. I just base that upon the subdivision I live in, and I wish the heck we had one in there for a lot of reasons, which I won't elaborate on right now, but I tell you, it sure keeps the kids and the people the heck out of the streets.
And this is something that the feeling has been changing on in the village, because when I got here a long time ago, nobody wanted sidewalks, they didn't want paths. And it has been coming around, but just, there's a maintenance aspect to these.
I
things.
understand.
And that's why I believe people didn't want them, just like curb and gutter and a lot of other things. But we don't have a plan. If we're gonna come up with one, I'm not against that. But we also need to we're gonna ask a developer to put a path in that may go nowhere. There has to be somewhere we're gonna do in the future then, because otherwise that's a lot of wasted
Yeah.
money.
And
So is this, I'm sorry.
But go ahead.
Well, we have an ordinance though. Why don't we have an ordinance if we're not gonna make people do it?
So this is one of those things where you look at things and go, what was the scope of the ordinance? What was the thought? So like over on Twin Pines, we're allowing one to be put in over there. There never was any walking path
Right.
there. So did it make sense to put them there? It's one of these things, does it make sense? So you want to put it in there so you can make essentially developers do it, but you also want it to make sense. I'm not saying this doesn't make sense. It won't make sense unless it's continued.
I don't believe, again, I'm talking for myself. I'm not in favor of sidewalks. Because to me, sidewalks denote, there's a sidewalk either on one or both sides of the street across every lot. That's not what I'm envisioning. I'm talking about walking paths. I believe,
Asphalt walking paths.
even if they're not paved. I mean, I don't want to get into what Lake 5 is, and that was, in order to pave that thing was gonna cost more than we ever wanted to do. We could do a lot more streets for what that was gonna be. But we need somewhere the county in their plan has a walking path, trail, whatever you want to call it, along Silver Spring. And when we talked to the developer of that property in Lisbon, on the west side of Mary Hill, we specifically talked to him about incorporating that path, not on Silver Spring, pulling it off, running it through that subdivision and connecting to the walking paths in Vista Run, which run all the way down to Lake Michigan. I mean, that's where that goes. So I think that there's a logical reason to run one down Mary Hill. And I don't want to not have it on this subdivision because then we'll never have anything. Because we will have a gap, because to go in after the fact with the property owners in October Fields and trying to obtain that path in the future is going to be an impossibility. I don't think that there's one necessary on Walnut Road because people can use that and they've got the internal streets if they have to, and we're not gonna put walking paths probably within October Fields, but I think a limited one within the landscape easement, which we already have along Mary Hill through the north-south length of October Fields is warranted.
I just wanted to chime in that the landscape easement that we're discussing is not an outlot. It is on lots.
Right.
And it doesn't extend the full length of the frontage of Mary Hill. You have, the landscape easement area is broken up by outlot 1 and then another outlot on the south end. So it doesn't, which would be outlot 4. So yes, lots 5, 6, 7, 34 and 33 have a 25-foot landscape easement in the rear of them. But again,
But you go south of there, we have the outlot, which is a given, and we got south of there, we do have a 25 that goes all the way across 34 and 33. Then we have another outlot. And then I wish I had an overall view of this, the full plat that was on here. And you get into 4, and 4 gets you all the way down to the end of the subdivision. So we do have a landscape easement across that whole area.
That it,
but again,
Warren, you're
my
saying-
point is that you're talking about putting a trail within a landscape easement, but that landscape easement is on private property on lots 5, 6, 7, 34 and 33. It's not the same thing as an outlot, which is owned by the association and maintained by them. It is on private property, so they.
Yeah, but the owners of that property know it's there when they buy the lot.
There's been a lot of discussion with all these developments happening along Mary Hill Road as well, that the village, both Sussex and Lisbon, may need to do some type of upgrades to it. And I think that would be the time to be on, you know, as an engineer looking at planning, that'd be the time to put in some type of a walkway along that roadway. I think it's gonna take effort on both and coordination with both, and there may be funding opportunities out there as I think about this through the LRIP program and so forth, that if we could team up with Sussex, there's good opportunities. The state loves.
We own the entire right of way of Mary Hill.
Do we own it
Yeah.
all? So
Yeah,
we all
the
are.
whole
Yeah.
enchilada.
Okay, well, just, either way, I'm just trying to, too bad that wasn't
understand.
the case, but we could share that cost with them as
I
at
don't
least.
know that we do.
Well,
Looking at the Waukesha, I'm looking at the Waukesha site right now.
I don't think we do.
I went through this with Kathy about 6 months ago and she said part of
There's a
the,
lot of wetlands in there too,
Yeah,
like
across
everything
from
north
the-
of,
Across from the ski hill,
yeah, that's all wetlands.
that's all swamp.
so we go on the other side.
That's the DNR?
The ski hills.
Yeah.
The ski.
Yeah,
Ski hills
I
are
dealt with
swamp
them for
too,
42
I'm-
years. I very well were. I used to be a lot taller and younger and skinnier.
I mean, there's a few, just looking here, I mean, there's a few that aren't, but according to this. Like,
Anyway. That's my thoughts. If we don't get it now, we never will.
yeah.
Just looking at this over the top, what is the traffic pattern or the traffic, density on Kate's Bridge, Brackland, and Brackland Drive going into Ridge? I think it's just Because I do think with the walking trail that at least you have some connection that you can work. It's at the corner of Mary Hill and Walnut. You go Kate Bridge into,
Walnut Road.
yeah.
Talking about Celtic Ridge?
Yes,
Oh,
that's what he's talking about.
Traffic is?
If the way, yeah, you were asking if for a point A to point B, is that, would there be some possibility that this walking trail would then somehow hook up with Celtic Ridge and kind of work its way north? That,
Celtic Ridge doesn't have any walking trails either.
This would be the start of something, which again, I'm not saying I'm against. I'm just saying, for goodness sakes, I'm not gonna be here. You're not doing this in 5 meetings, figuring out a whole trail plan. I'm just saying, if you're gonna do this, don't just put a short path in here and then in 10 years, everybody's looking at us going, wow, were they drinking that night?
well, you'll be back on the plan commission by then.
Negative. Did you want to make some comments? Sorry. We're talking about you. We don't even let you talk.
I would, thank you. Joe Bukovich with Point Real Estate, the applicant for this. There's been a lot of discussion tonight and quite a bit to unpack. And starting off with Mr. Blurenclaw's comments, Mike Carrick, the developer, has agreed to put in landscaped mowed paths into the neighborhood. When we started talking about this, we first heard of this less than a week ago to try to address the paths and everything. And I had seen some stuff that was discussed kind of offhand at a staff where it said paved trails. And that was never discussed with the homeowners or at a public meeting. And that's why I left the request for the waiver on the agenda. Not knowing if your code requires paved paths, which is a real issue with the topo that's out there. If you're trying to pave some of that stuff, you start running into ADA issues trying to get that in there. But if you're talking mowed paths, we would be agreeable to putting those in along Mary Hill and partially within around the pond, where we can get them to work. There was one thought about trying to connect the 2 cul-de-sacs through the outlot. Most of those all have partial to full exposures, going down slopes to get down to the exposures. There's a drainage swale running through there. So I didn't know how to get a paved trail built. But if we're talking mowed grass paths, that we'd be amenable to that. And I'm not sure if a waiver is needed at that point or not. I just want to keep it on the agenda in case it was paved paths, then I'd be a little bit more disliking of that requirement. And and that's kind of a little bit of the consensus that I've heard here is mowed paths is okay. And if we need a 10-foot easement on the west side of that landscape easement for a path, so be it. That gives you room if you ever redo Mary Hill. You do a curb up to a paved and then slope down into the site, it would work.
Yeah. As long as it's on the recorded plat is my concern, so that the buyer, they understand what's at the back of their lot.
Right.
I don't have an issue with that. I think it's a way to go. If the rest of the commission is amenable to that, I think it's a decent compromise and people can get from where they need to go. They can always go through the outlots. As long as we can get that, if we can get 10 feet along there, I appreciate your comments regarding a technically correct pathway, and they're almost now to the width of a highway. I mean, they're obscene, and I understand, but something's better than nothing.
So I've got a question. If you're doing it in the landscape easement and we don't have a landscape easement in any of the outlots, is there any way in the future when 10-foot spot would allow us some more room in Mary Hill if we were going to do curb and gutter and then some kind of a path in there. Is there something that needs to be put in the area also in the two outlot areas as well?
I would say those are owned commonly by all the lot owners.
Right.
That you wouldn't need an easement to walk on that.
The only thing is if it's not, if, my concern would be when and if Lisbon widens the road and puts in a path that the property owners don't want, that they block because we don't have anything on those two outlots that gives us this path on the plat.
Okay, I'm sorry. If you want a 10-foot easement across the outlots as well, that's no
Yeah,
problem.
I just want to make sure that. it
I
carries
misunderstood.
through.
I thought you were talking around the pond and stuff, and I'm not,
No,
I don't know how to quite do
just
that.
just through the two. We
Yeah,
got it.
we would do a
to
continuous from the
Westminster.
south end to the north end, 10 feet wide along the just 10 feet right off of the right of way line.
So to answer the question regarding the requirements, state 8.14 of the subdivision ordinance, chapter 12, states pedestrian trails shall be required throughout all developments with the location and width to be determined by the plan commission. The surface of the trail shall be asphalt along or near roadways and gravel paved or of a surface otherwise approved by the plan commission throughout the balance of the development, unless otherwise waived as provided herein. So I would suggest if the plan commission is amenable to a mode path, that we still grant a waiver from the paving requirement. Since we are talking about a trail near the Mary Hill roadway.
I'd be willing to do that.
I would be fine with it.
Good work.
There's a lot of work that has to be done to make this happen, just so you know that.
I
You
think,
guys can all, and I don't mean this as critical as it may come off, wave a magic wand that this is gonna occur, but somebody has to work out all the details. Who's gonna pave it, who's gonna mow it, and whose right do they have to go on private property without an easement to mow it? You know, so they're gonna have to put an easement, right? Because if you were the property owner and you didn't like the
Yeah.
idea of.
ideally, you'd have a pedestrian access easement
All the way.
identified.
10-foot.
Yeah.
On the final plat, we can add that to the final plat.
Okay, and then would that preclude the landscape easement for that portion of those lots? Would it be separate from that?
They would be in the same easement. You'd have 0 to 25 landscape and 0 to 10 walking trail. Or pedestrian access, or whatever that name that.
That's why I asked where the landscaping plan was, because I believe it can be, the 10 feet can fit within the 25, and it's part of the landscaping plan, and the easement itself is shown on the final plat. So that takes care of the title company and the lot owners. So I think we can get from point A to point B to incorporate that. Yes, it's some work, but it's a lot less cost than putting in a 15-foot wide paved, ADA compliant bike path.
We all agree with that. But we need the guidance from you all as to what extent. Joe has indicated what he wants and how he envisions doing it, you know. Maybe we should, at this point, Mr. President, could we ask the developer again to explain how he envisions, based on the comments he heard, accomplishing this?
We would add a 10-foot wide pedestrian easement along the westerly 10 feet along the right of way line. And that would be the westerly 10 feet of the 25-foot wide landscape easement. The 10-foot wide path easement would be dedicated to the village and the association, so they can maintain it. And if there's anything that's needed in the future for the village, they'd have the right to go in there and use it. And it would be a mode path.
The outlots. You have to.
Yeah, the easement would go from the south side to the north side across anything that it crosses.
Yeah.
Lots, outlots, not roads.
The only concern I have is how can we get this accomplished? Cause you're gonna have to do it, Joe. in a timely manner, so we don't hold up the final plat, so you can start selling some lots out there, which I believe is Mr. Carrick's desire.
Right, right.
Well, the answer to that, Joe, if I may, Mr. Everly, is that you do it subject to the engineer and planner being satisfied that the intent of the plan commission and village board has been satisfied. And we don't work out all the language of the deed restriction, we don't work all the language of the easement. You tell us what your goal is, and the staff makes sure it happens, and we don't sign the final plat until they're satisfied.
Developers agreement or HOA will say.
And I
that it
stand corrected,
is
what this
to
community
maintain.
has stated, but maybe now at this late notice, we don't want to defer to the administrator. We did make a policy decision a month or two ago to just say to the satisfaction of the administrator. So if we want to do that, that's fine. She won't sign it without the engineer and planner signing off on it, I'm sure, and legal if need be, but
I heard that. I understand.
Yeah.
I think, I just want to I don't want to have to bring this final plat back between now and the end of the year. I'm trying to be respectful of the developer so they can do what they gotta do so they can start recouping some of their money and still accomplish what I believe the plan commission is gonna want.
I'd like to make sure that the HOA is the responsible, to make sure that that path is kept and maintained.
I'm sure staff will do an exemplary job like they normally do, working out the details. And based upon what you said, Joe, sounds good to me.
We have 3 weeks before the council meeting. It's not real difficult to add the easement to the plat.
Sure.
And we've got plenty of documents with easement language that we can use to
Okay.
create something on that.
Our, meeting has been moved up to the 6th of November.
I stand corrected. It's 2 weeks.
Yeah.
November 6th.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Joe.
no, I'm just saying, these are my thoughts. I don't want to speak for the plan commission and, I'm only old for the time, so.
There's a couple roads in Lisbon where traffic has really gotten. It's gone up a lot. Lake 5, Mary Hill, they're 2 roads. Honestly, in the future, when they're redone, you're probably looking at putting some kind of sidewalk in.
Absolutely.
Part of this and looking in this is I really see this as a patch. I think you need a bigger plan in which Mary Hill, when it's redone in the future, whether it's in, with the Village of Sussex or whatever, at some point you have a sidewalk on one side of the road from one end to the other. Yes. I think personally, the grass path, while very nice, is a very small piece of this. Not against this, if the developers, why would I be against it if the developer's in favor of it, obviously? I just think at some point, those are 2 roads that are gonna have to be seriously looked at and planned that way. And it's very, very expensive.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as part of the excavation for those 2 roads, I hopefully find a pot full of gold.
Not
But
gonna
this
be
is 2 roads. I think,
Extremely
that
expensive.
Things have just changed, so. Okay. Anything else from? All right, so we have the waiver of the chapter 12 land division ordinance, which we'd be looking to waive that this needs to be an asphalt path, correct?
Right.
So we'd be looking for a motion to that effect.
I'll make the motion to waive the requirement in the whatever section that is with regard to pavement requirements. Oh, section 8.14, the paving requirement of the path.
A second,
I'll second.
second by Brian. That clear enough?
Yep, got it.
All right, motion made and seconded. Any final discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Then we had the final plat approval for the proposed Oktoberfield subdivision.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure when Orin read what's in 814, it said throughout the subdivision, did it not? I just want to make sure we're only talking about, so it's specific to Mary Hill, not,
Internal paths do not have to be paved.
Correct. It does allow for a different treatment
yeah,
for
but we're
those.
not gonna require an internal path, is what I'm saying. I just
That'll
wanna
be-
make sure, okay, I'm sorry.
That'll be part of the next, because that'll be part of the final plat. So then the question is everyone okay having staff review it and making sure that it meets the intent?
Yes.
Yes.
And so we'd be looking for a motion to that effect.
I'll make a motion in approval of the final plat for October Fields as presented.
With the engineering.
Oh, yeah, well, engineering staff, the staff comments.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay, made and seconded. So final approval of the plat contingent upon, subject to the comments of the engineer and planner, but then also allowing the
Staff to review.
staff to approve the final plat is in regard to the trails. Is the motion okay with that?
Yes.
Second okay with that?
Yes.
Is that clear enough?
Yep, got it.
Okay, any discussion?
No.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you, Joe.
Item C, discussion only regarding proposed draft updates to the Lisbon zoning code.
So staff has been working on section 3 of the zoning code. And
We don't have anything in our packets.
we don't have anything in your packets. I have a draft. If you'd like, I can walk you through what I've done thus far. I can share it on the screen. Or I can get you all a copy of this latest draft to look at and provide comments back. I will tell you that, just to hit some of the highlights, as we had previously discussed, I am now proposing some landscaping and lighting standards and a more detailed site plan and plan of review procedure. The landscaping and lighting standards currently in the village only apply in our gateway areas per boundary agreement with the Village of Sussex. One of the things that we had talked about when we initially proposed this project was bringing forward some type of village-wide standard for those, for development that would occur in other areas in the village outside of those. The standards would apply to non-residential development. The their minimum standards to be met. We've updated the definition section with some things that we found pertinent. I have removed the requirement for major grading permits to come before the Plan Commission.
Warren, I don't know if anyone's gonna be following all of this. We need to get the document in their hands.
Sure. So I just thought I'd hit the highlights of some of the stuff that I've done. So there's other information at the beginning and end of the document that we've updated.
How about parking?
The parking standards have been updated.
Accessory building has been
Accessory
updated.
building requirements have been updated. We've put some chicken standards into here that would allow chickens within, on residential property, including in subdivisions. It would be limited to 5. And there would be a requirement for a coop and a run, and there'd be some standards for that, but overall, it would be more permissive than what's on the books today. The other stuff that's in here, I guess, is a little more specific, but those are some of the larger issues, so again, we can get this to you all to look at and send comments back, just don't reply all, would be my suggestion. And,
I have a question.
yeah,
Would this be the section to include provisions requiring private sanitary systems be within a property boundary?
I think that's in chapter 12.
Don't have that, and I think we've run into issues with that. I think we need to get something.
like it would be within the subdivision ordinance, the extent that sanitary sewer is discussed in this code is pretty brief. There's a bonus that can be granted if a development has sanitary sewer as far as reduction from certain requirements of the zoning. The main thing, with this again is that this is going to be for the village. We're taking out all the old references to the county and the procedures and requirements for things to go back to them to be blessed after the village had done. There have been some updates to things in the municipal code that will be now referenced in here. As an example, the sign regulations have now been pulled out. That's in a specific chapter of the municipal code now. There's just a reference to them here. The floodplain and shoreline standards have been pulled out. There are references, but again, those are in a separate document now. Reason for that is that you don't now have to amend your entire zoning code when something from FEMA comes up, they want to update their mapping. Now you just do that ordinance separately. You don't have to crack into this and do it all at the same time.
So
So
the goal is to get through this zoning changes so we can have a public hearing. And we've come to our next, when we start our next discussion item, that's going to be important to be able to get through a time frame for a public hearing and then and for you to review it. So I think that's going to be, we're kind of on a tight schedule with the holidays, so.
Are we gonna be furnished this, Orin, and markup so we know what's gone away, and are you able to do that?
it's
with
in
what
track,
you've got?
it's in track changes.
Track change,
form.
but okay.
Yep.
I didn't know if it-
Similar
if
to
it-
the section 4 stuff that we already
Yeah.
went through, it's in track changes form.
Okay.
Yep.
I didn't know if it was possible or not.
Yep.
Okay,
It's possible.
if you send it to us, then you should send us a deadline when you need it back. Otherwise, it'll never get done. I'm trying to respect Kathy's timeline.
Sure.
Questions? All right. D,
So-
discussion,
We get paid the big bucks.
discussion necessary action regarding November and December meeting dates.
Okay, so the way that our schedule looks for November is our November Plan Commission would fall the evening before Thanksgiving. And the way the December meeting would fall would be Christmas Day. Due to publication cutoffs and statutory requirements for publication deadlines for specific items that are applied for, such as a comp plan amendment, which we do have an application for, that requires a 30-day notice. So due to that and other meetings we already have on the books, our recommendation is to cancel the November 27th and December 25th Plan Commission meetings and hold a special Plan Commission meeting on Wednesday, December 4th. That does give us enough time for those statutory publication deadlines.
Okay. Except, I agree with the November 27th or 26th or 27th. If the Plan Commission decides that they don't want to meet the day before Thanksgiving, I guess get an idea if the Plan Commission feels that that's a necessity to move that one. We are looking at having to do 2 meetings because we didn't get our code today for you to review. So we could have an actual discussion today on it to find if there's any, before we go to public hearing, unless you feel comfortable enough to us go directly to public hearing. On the 4th, we're going to need another meeting in here for you to review the packet information or the information on the zoning code. So we have a full packet. We want you to look at the updates that are in there, so then we can go to public hearing. Or are you comfortable with us just going to public hearing without you seeing everything? So I would say we need 2 meetings. If we are going to get this done in December, we are gonna need 2 meetings.
Let's plan the 4th one and let's talk about the other date. Yeah. We have a meeting in the 4th, even if everything is good, which it's not gonna be. I'm not, I mean, it just,
And we don't
I've been through
actually,
this before.
if we have the meeting on the 4th, we don't have enough days to do the, public hearing notice.
For comp plan?
Yes, we do, not for comp plan, for zoning district. Because we would be bringing it in on the 4th. And then we have to do a comp plan.
Correct.
I mean, we have to do a public hearing. And that doesn't leave us enough room in December. So essentially, we're making the decision, we're not gonna get the zoning code done while I'm here.
Could we,
Up to you guys. If you don't, if that's comfortable with you, I'm comfortable with that as well, but.
November 13th, if we wanna do a.
Unless you want to do a review on another day. Yeah, we could review on November 13th because we moved our village board meeting from the 13th to the 6th. Oh, you're not here. That's why we moved it. That's right. Oops.
Be here, but I couldn't legally make any decisions.
Yeah. Your call, guys. I had a deadline. If it's not gonna make it with the holidays, I understand. We just won't get the project done.
Not gonna lie, I think we're gonna have 3 or 4 more meetings on this. I mean, we did this back in 2011, I mean, and this was like. When we got to the actually going through everything, it was meeting after meeting after meeting, once we got it back.
So-
There was like long workshops.
So do we want to do December 4th? We'll do what Elisa had suggested. Cancel both meetings, the November 27th and the December 25th. And have a special plan commission meeting held on December 4th, same time. That meeting, you'll have a comp plan review and the review of the zoning code as we have it at that point to start your edits. And then if we have other applicants that are coming in, I think we have 2 more applicants that have come in.
So if we have that one on the 4th and go over things and have everything goes well, I mean, you'll have the month to go through it, and then if we have to go, I mean, we're basically just. If everything goes great, wonderful, then we're just approving it in January. So. Cause you have the whole month, thought you're out, didn't you?
Yeah. I really was working on it.
Is everybody okay with that?
Okay, we're gonna eliminate the 27th of November and eliminate the 25th of December, and we're gonna add December 4th.
Correct.
Correct.
Is everyone good with that? Is there anyone that cannot make it?
I can make.
We need to make sure
I know
Becky
you.
can and make turkey.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
item 7, planner report.
Again, we have 2 applications for our next meeting. And we will get that on the agenda as we discussed for the next meeting.
Item 8 is adjournment. Joe moves to adjourn. There's a
I'll second.
second. Rob
McDonald.
seconds. No discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You're out at 7:57.
I'm sorry. Dan.
Thank you, everyone.
Apologize.
you.
It was 17 minutes.